GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to episode 107 of Trust the Podcast. That's right, episode 107. Powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This one is entitled, Is This the Year? The Buffalo Bills open the season on Thursday night against the Los Angeles Rams, which we will talk about here in just a few minutes. But before we get to that, want to let you know you can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, and wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, make sure to always hit the subscribe button if you haven't to stay up to date on the latest podcast. I am Ryan Wolfe at WolfeBLTD, flying solo for the first few sections of the podcast. We'll have a special guest later on after our commercial break. So the Buffalo Bills, as mentioned, are days away from kicking off one of the most anticipated seasons in franchise history. We have seen the projections, and many have the Bills reaching the pinnacle of the National Football League. So with that being said, it pushes us right to our three big things here. Three big things brought to you by PuckLuck.com, your one-stop resource for all of your NHL sports betting action. PuckLuck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? PuckLuck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way. Please note, PuckLuck.com is in no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the National Hockey League Players Association. PuckLuck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. Now, we're going to move into a fun little segment called Projecting the Season. And while I spent a lot of time looking around the internet getting a whole bunch of different projections, the answer was simple to me. I paid the $4.99 for the month of EA Play on my computer, my gaming computer, I should say. I fired up Madden 23, and I ended up spending some time projecting the season through franchise mode. You know, you just run a quick simulation. You go back, you collect the statistics, and boy, for the Buffalo Bills, was Madden 23 very kind. Offensively, first off, quarterback Josh Allen, projected through Madden, 5,160 passing yards, 47 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, with 272 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. He did go on to be named the league MVP in this simulation. Running back Devin Singletary, 261 rushing attempts for 1,028 rushing yards, 11 rushing touchdowns, with 35 receptions for 289 yards and 4 touchdowns. Rookie running back James Cook, 76 rushing attempts for 239 yards, with 6 rushing touchdowns, along with 11 receptions for 74 yards. The big one here, wide receiver Stephon Diggs, 118 receptions for 1,558 yards and 11 touchdowns. Gabriel Davis, wide receiver, also expected to have another breakout season. 73 receptions for 956 yards and 9 touchdowns. And maybe Madden knows something we don't, with wide receiver Jamison Crowder, who recorded 77 receptions for 1,089 yards and 12 touchdowns in this projection. Also, tight end Dawson Knox, not to be forgotten about, 79 receptions for 805 yards and 8 touchdowns in his walk year. So if Dawson Knox has a big year like that, it might be hard for the Buffalo Bills to re-sign him, but good to have him this season in Buffalo. So with that being said, offensively, not much of a surprise, because the Buffalo Bills are expected to be one of the top, if not the top offensive teams in the National Football League. So those statistics, the only one really that sticks out to me, James Cook seems a little underused. Devin Singletary might be a little overused. And Jamison Crowder, not sure where that came from. Maybe the depth chart was messed up in the game or whatever it may be. But again, it's a video game just meant to give you kind of an idea of what to expect potentially this season. We move on to our second of the three big things here. Defensively and special teams-wise, we've got some very interesting statistics to point out here as well. Per the Madden projection, linebacker Von Miller recorded 21 and a half sacks and was named the AFC Defensive Player of the Year. Defensive tackle Ed Oliver had 9 sacks. Defensive end Greg Russo, 7.5 sacks. And rookie cornerback, Kyer Elam, from University of Florida, recorded 96 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, a half a sack, and 2 interceptions. He was named the AFC Defensive Rookie of the Year. Also on special teams, Tyler Bass recorded 16 of 21 field goals and 69 of 70 extra points. And I know if John were here right now, he would interrupt me to say nice, so I have to just put that in there. So again, very high-powered offense, very high-powered defense. Madden was very kind to the Buffalo Bills in this game this season, but we must say, we're not going to give away the projections yet. I know you don't want to hear me talk to myself for any much longer, so what I'm going to do, we'll throw it to commercial break, and when we come back, we'll have a special guest to break down more projections and talk about the Week 1 matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the Los Angeles Rams. Stick around for more Trust the Podcast right after these commercial breaks here on the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And we're back here on Trust the Podcast, the third of the 3 big things projecting the season overall with the Bills. We've talked about individual offense and defensive players throughout the podcast, but now we're here to talk about the team as a whole. And we have a special guest joining us on the phone. It is friend of the podcast, co-host of the Sabercast, sometimes a co-host of the Better Live Than Dead podcast. It's Brayton Wilson. He is WBEN, WGR. You'll hear him on the radio. You'll see him around. If there's news happening, you can follow him on Twitter at Brayton J. Wilson. Brayton, my man, how you doing?
You know, Ryan, I'm doing pretty darn good. We're just hours away from football, and it's a wonderful feeling.
It's really weird to think, not only because of the Labor Day weekend, it kind of messed me up a bit, but it's crazy to think that the Buffalo Bills, I mean, granted, from all the years we've had to now, looking now, it makes sense the Bills are opening the season, but from where they've come, for me, I'm just like, man, this is crazy that the Buffalo Bills are opening the season against the defending Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, no, it's really weird that we've just kind of been like waiting for football, and it feels like, oh my God, just get here already. And now all of a sudden it's, September, and we're all just like, oh man, it actually is here. This is a great feeling. This is wonderful, and looking forward to Bills football getting underway.
So right now, VegasInsider.com, it was the quickest place to find stats. They have the Bills, the favorites to win the Super Bowl at plus 650. Josh Allen is the favorite at plus 700 to win the league MVP. Buffalo, easily the favorite to win the AFC East for the 3rd straight season, and the over-under is 11.5 wins. Now, Brayton, just to bring you up to speed, I talked about this earlier in the podcast. I ran a quick Madden sim. I know you and I were texting back and forth about it, but we'll just run down the stats here really quick, and we can kind of discuss how you feel the Bills will go perform overall as a team. Because as I mentioned, we already talked about individual stuff before the commercial break, but Madden has the Buffalo Bills finishing 12-5, winning the AFC East championship, or the AFC East crown, I guess, whatever you want to call it, has them losing to the Cincinnati Bengals 48-34 in the AFC divisional round, who the Bengals, spoiler alert, in this Madden projection, they go on to win Super Bowl 57, 35-31 over the Green Bay Packers. But this is what I was interested in, Brayton, because this is what I believe kind of what we're going to see this year, and really what we've seen from the Buffalo Bills in the past. This Madden projection has them number 1 in offensive points per game at 32.4, 4th in offensive passing yards per game at 305.1, 25th in offensive rushing yards per game at 96.7, defensively, number 1 in defensive points per game at 19.6, 16th in defensive pass yards per game at 269.9, and 3rd in defensive rush yards per game at 92.4. So Brayton, real quick, as a whole, the reason I have you here, give me your thoughts real quick on the Buffalo Bills as a whole, how you expect them to perform up to these projected statistics.
Well, certainly interesting that they had the Bills losing to the Bengals in the divisional round. I mean, I think the Bengals are better, but I don't know what I don't know how the Bengals will be able to get back to the Super Bowl after the way they kind of did it last year. It just, Joe Burrow's great, and I think that the team is really good overall. It's just, I just don't see them getting to a point where they're going to return to the Super Bowl and represent the AFC once again. But overall, I mean, those projections don't necessarily surprise me. Knowing that they're going to be one of the best producing offenses in the entire league, and that they're going to be one of the better overall defenses once again. I mean, it's hard to beat what they did last year with being the number one ranked defense overall. It's all about this year for the Bills just being able to work in a cohesive unit under Ken Dorsey in his first year as offensive coordinator after replacing Brian Dable, who went to the New York Giants to be the head coach of the football Giants. So, 12-5 for an overall record projection, I think it's fair. I think that 12-5 is still a very good mark for the Bills to set. Last year they finished 10-7, 11-6. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was 11-6. But a lot of people were kind of surprised that it ended up being 11-6. They thought it was going to be better, and I definitely think that they could take that mark last year and build off that even more so to be a better team overall. So certainly, looking at those projections of 12-5 are certainly fair. I think people will have a better argument to say that they're going to be better than that. And there will be some people who don't believe that a 12-5 record is good enough for the Bills, who may finish worse than that, maybe another 11-6 record or 10-7 record. But, certainly the Bills, even though their schedule is maybe a little tougher than it was last year, I think they'll still fare very well, especially in an AFC East that, we don't know if there's truly a contender to put up the credence that the Bills put up in the division right now.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at it overall as a whole, again, we're taking numbers from a video game, so you can kind of only go so far. Right. But then again, when you look at it, the stats are so hard. It's so hard to kind of find statistics that seem even keeled and logical, because you look at one place and it says, oh, they're going to go 14-2, and then one place says they're going to go 10-7, and you're like, I don't know which one to believe. So that way we just did the Madden projection, like I said. But my thought here, 12-5, like you said, Brayton, seems fair. But just like last year, as we saw with the Buffalo Bills, it wasn't so much about winning as many games in the regular season. It was about getting to the postseason and then applying the pressure and essentially allowing Josh Allen to run the show completely. So it's I hate to say, hey, we're going to take 18 weeks to figure out what this team can do offensively and defensively, but to me, that's kind of what it is. You have these teams that fight and claw to make the playoffs, and sometimes they're able to keep that going on in the playoffs, and that's awesome. But for me, again, I think at the end of the day, the Buffalo Bills just need to win enough to get into the playoffs and then unleash themselves from there. Because again, they were, I hate to say it, but they were 13 seconds away from the AFC Championship game last season. So, I don't necessarily think that they'll lose.
Listen, I know some people are still hung up over the 13 seconds thing, and I get it. I understand. But at the same point, I had the thought in the back of my head, and I'm going to continue to say this and fight with it. It's just like, you were still facing Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs are still a wrecking ball in the entire NFL, not only just the AFC, but the entire NFL. They're still going to be Super Bowl contenders, not this year, but for many years to come. And it's because they've got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They got one of the most innovative coaches in NFL history, arguably. So, obviously 13 seconds will haunt the Bills for a very long time. But I think that, I think still there are too many people that are hung up over that fact. I mean, I've gotten over it. I was over it shortly after the game ended. Yeah, it stunk that they lost those 13 seconds and that it was not defended that well. But I think that too many people are still hung up on it. That's just my opinion, at least.
So my thought process behind this at this point in time is that the Buffalo Bills may have not responded appropriately after the game, as we heard about all the stories coming out about how Sean McDermott just kind of refused to acknowledge it. But it seems like as time has gone on, they've grown from it. Now, those are things that can make or break teams, where you look at it and say, okay, how do we respond to adversity? Do we crack or do we continue to move forward? And I've talked with John about this on the podcast before, as everybody knows at this point, and we've explained it ad nauseum as well, that it seems like the Buffalo Bills are going to learn and grow from this, which has me so excited for our look ahead, looking at the first week of the football season, the 2022-23 NFL season. Got the Buffalo Bills at the Los Angeles Rams Thursday night, September 8th at SoFi Stadium on NBC. The Buffalo Bills will be witnesses to history as the Rams celebrate their Super Bowl 56 victory prior to kickoff. And really, Brayton, to be the best, you have to beat the best. Buffalo can make an incredibly large statement if they're able to handle the Rams in the season opener. Now, I know that the Buffalo Bills have talked about some players might not be 100%, but everybody seems relatively close. They don't know who's going to play cornerback, who's going to get more snaps, because obviously with Tre'Davious White on the physically unable to perform list, rookies are going to get time. But again, the Bills went out. They know they needed to get to the quarterback. They went out. They got Von Miller, which again we've talked about before. Not only added some very good talent defensively, but it allowed him to help the other young defenders, the young pass rushers is the word I'm looking for, to also soak in that knowledge and get better, which will help the Buffalo Bills defense overall. And I find it hard to believe that even though the Bills were the best defense in the league last year, they'll probably be just that much better this year simply by adding the experience of Von Miller. So I think it's going to be a pretty damn good game. But before I say anything, Brayton, I want to get your prediction on what you think is going to happen on Thursday Night Football, kicking off the NFL season.
Yeah, no, I mean, I certainly think the Bills are going to dominate the AFC East once again. I think that the defense is going to be a number one unit overall in the league. I think maybe not number one, but just a top unit overall. And I think that the nice little transition from Brian Dable to Ken Dorsey will go just fine. I think that Josh Allen obviously is one of the better quarterbacks in the entire NFL, and I think that he can easily continue to carry this offense over from one offensive coordinator to the next and just make it seem so flawless with the transition. So overall this year, I think the Bills can go 13-4. I don't know who they'll lose to. They're bound every year to have a stinker like they did against Jacksonville, so there's probably going to be one of those games. But, other than that, the Bills are truly one of the best teams in the NFL, perhaps maybe even the most well-rounded team in the NFL, from offense to defense to special teams to coaching, even to management. So certainly I've seen so many people and so many pundits and so many, just the average fan picking the Bills as the team to beat overall in the NFL, which is a really nice feeling, especially, since I know you and me, we barely remember anything. If not, don't even remember anything from the 90s Bills when they were going to 4 straight Super Bowls. So to have that kind of notoriety and to have that kind of hype surrounding this team for the first time since then is really, really unique to experience and feel, as our parents have felt before, and, other of our relatives have felt as well. So I think the Bills will do really, really well this year. I think that they will compete for a Super Bowl. I'm a little suspicious about wanting to say that they are going to the Super Bowl, just because you never know what happens once they get to the playoffs. So, but I'm very optimistic in terms of what is going to happen this year.
And as for the game, what's your prediction?
I like the chances for the Bills. I like the offensive chances, especially. Jalen Ramsey is a tough matchup for the Bills in terms of, Josh Allen going up against Diggs or Davis or whoever that Ramsey is going to go against. And obviously Aaron Donald is one of the best, if not the best, NFL defenseman in the entire NFL. He's just a force to be reckoned with. But as long as Buffalo's defense can do just enough to contain Matthew Stafford and contain that Rams offense, and the Bills can move the ball down the field against the Rams, I think that they can pull off a win in Los Angeles on a night where the Rams are going to raise their championship banner for winning the Super Bowl this past year. I'll go 28-27 Bills.
And just to pass along here, John Cimino, he was not able to make it to the podcast today, which is why you get me for a while, then you get me and myself and Brayton. John says over text message 34-23 Buffalo, and we also got a special prediction from Mr. Perez of the Better Live Than Dead podcast. He says 24-21 Bills. I'm going to go, I want to say 28-23 Buffalo. I do agree with you, Brayton, throughout the season. There's probably going to be a stinker or two. The Buffalo Bills, if I remember correctly, have the 13th hardest schedule in the league, so it's not terrible. But the start of their season looks a little difficult. I don't understand why that was so difficult for me to say the word difficult, but the start of the season, the start of the season is a little tough. But the Buffalo Bills will learn a lot about themselves in these first few weeks of the season, and then by the time that they kind of hit the ground running and kind of get into a stretch run, it gets a little easier for them. So we'll see how it plays out. I think the Buffalo Bills have as good of a chance as anybody else of getting to the Super Bowl. If it does happen, then you'll get my prediction for that game. But right now, I'm just going to say it's going to be another fun season of Buffalo Bills football.
100%. I agree. Let's have some fun this year.
And with that being said, we'll wrap this podcast up. Again, the first game of the season, Thursday Night Football on September 8th on NBC in prime time. I believe kickoff's around 8:20. And I don't really know what else to tell you about it. The Bills are going to play the Rams, and the season's going to start, and we'll see what happens. Maybe the Bills will play in the first game, and then they'll also play in the last game. But with that being said, I'm Ryan Wolfe at WolfeBLTD. Brayton is at Brayton J. Wilson. We are Trust the Podcast.
And you are not.
You didn't forget it. I appreciate it. We will talk to you sometime very soon to break down week 1 and get back into the swing of things of the regular season. But as always, thanks for tuning in, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.